Guys, a very warm welcome back to the channel. A very wet evening here at London's Heathrow. I'm going to be flying with British Airways aboard their A380 in their economy. It's going to be on the upper deck, so let's see how they're doing in 2023. Well, it's nice to be checking in inside, away from the rain. In terms of checking options for economy passengers at Heathrow's Terminal 5, generally speaking, you're looking at a fairly automated approach. On that particular evening, it was silky smooth and nice and quiet. That said, if you do have any sort of status, be it bronze, silver or gold, do look out for those zones because it can make it an awful lot easier, particularly when it's busy. On that evening, I went to the club zones and it was really nice and easy, and I was on my way in no time at all. So that's the check-in done. It is absolutely gloriously quiet here this evening, so flew straight through, bag on the belt. Now I'm ready to head through security. I hope the rest of the terminal is this quiet, and then it's going to be a pretty good experience all round. Check me out on the other side. I've long been a fan of the various different food and beverage options at Terminal 5. There's a decent variety of places, whether you're looking for something a little bit higher end, the Gordon Ramsay restaurant I'd recommend on that front, or perhaps a bit more of a cafe approach. Thanks to status, I was able to head to one of the lounges on that particular evening. That said, and of course, lounge access wouldn't be included as part of an economy ticket, and it's only thanks to status that I'm able to access. I won't go into any sort of detail whatsoever on the lounge, but if you do want to see one of the 4 lounge tours, you can check them out on my channel. So I've gone with the underground walkway over to the gate. It's sea gates tonight, so it's a little bit of a trek, but if you guys ever fancy skipping out on the crowds and having a bit of a leg stretch before the flight, these underground tunnels are a really good way of doing things. Instead of taking the lift down to minus level 2, take it down to minus level 4 and enjoy the walk along. There's a few travelators, so it does tend to make it a little bit easier, but otherwise in the next scene you'll see me jumping on board and checking out what life is like aboard economy with British Airways aboard their A380. Whilst the flight was pretty busy on that evening, boarding was handled very well indeed, and in no time at all I was heading up the air bridge on board the A380. Let's take a moment to have a quick look at the seat map. The economy section is in the rearmost cabin of the upper deck, just behind the business and premium economy cabins. I was to be seated in seat 78K on that particular evening. Usually I do like the seats that back up against the bulkhead behind it, but we'll discover in a moment as to why that perhaps wasn't the best choice. As I travelled through the cabin, I saw BA's outgoing Club World business class product, and just behind it, the premium economy. If you're keen to check out either of these, I've got reviews on both of them, and I'll pop them down in the comments just below. Now, it's well worth mentioning at this point in time that there is a much larger economy section down on the main deck. The reason, however, why I always opt for the upper deck is because the seating configuration is far less dense. It's just 242 across just here. Down below, it's 343. So if you can bag one of the twin seats next to the window, that would be my firm recommendation in terms of seats to go for on the 380. Just before getting settled into the seats, awaiting for me was a small pillow, a blanket, and also a pair of headphones. Okay, that's me on board. Seats laid out in a 242 configuration, so pretty good seating config. As expected, they're a little bit older. The padding is slightly reduced, and the cleanliness of the seats doesn't look great. As I said, I do have storage just down to the side, which is always a nice touch on the A380, which is why it's always good to book the upper deck. But anyway, let's spend a couple of minutes unpacking the rest of this seat and get you fully acclimatised to what life is like aboard British Airways on their A380 back in economy. Now, what I hadn't discovered when filming that clip was that the recline functionality of these seats, as they were back of bulkheads, was actually hampered quite significantly. I regularly sit in these types of seats across a variety of carriers, and I've never suffered that being the case, but on this occasion it certainly was, so be aware if you are indeed picking them. In terms of other seat features, plenty of charging. There was a USB socket in the back of the seat, plug socket just below, and legroom was actually pretty decent. For reference, I'm around 180 centimetres. There were individual reading lights just above, however, no individual air vents, so a bit of a watch out there for those that particularly enjoy them. As I've already alluded to, one of the big highlights of the 380 is to have the storage bins down to the side. Mine, however, was looking pretty knackered, as was the rest of the cabin. That's something that we'll get into a little bit later on. By that time, we were already well on our way out towards the departure runway, so sit back and enjoy what was, and as ever, a fantastic takeoff on the Airbus A380. without doubt one of those evenings that you just couldn't wait to be departing Heathrow, heading for far more sunnier climates. With the flight fully underway and us taking to those wintry skies, let's check out all things onboard review with a look at the entertainment system. First things first, let's touch the screen and get going. Come on, British Airways. Come on, British Airways. Okay, that was completely broken. Definitely not a good start on that particular front. Thankfully, the handheld device was working and that allowed me to access the HighLife entertainment system. Look guys, overall HighLife, as I said on previous reviews, it's a really decent entertainment system. On that particular evening, the screen was absolutely shocking. The touchscreen was broken, it was slow, it was laggy, it was washed out. Not a good start by BA on that front. I'm pleased to report that Wi-Fi was available on board, and I actually opted for this on that particular evening as a form of entertainment. Now, in terms of the Wi-Fi, this is available across a range of different packages. You have a simple messaging only package, which comes at a slightly cheaper price point. There's then the full browse package, which gives you the ability to have an unlimited amount of data for various different durations across the flight. On that particular evening, I opted for the full flight package, which cost $14.99. As already mentioned, waiting at the seat was a small pair of headphones. These replaced the outgoing small plasticky type headsets that you usually get in economy. They worked broadly about the same. Overall, not too great, but certainly in terms of expectations, not too bad. Just before the main service, I jumped up to have a quick look around the cabin. Quick toilet review, just here. Toilets, nothing particularly special. There were some toilets just behind where I was seated, so that was nice and convenient, and they were broadly pretty clean. Just ahead of the food being brought round, there was a small snack service which featured some pretzels and then also a drink service as well. I opted for a gin and tonic on that particular evening, and I have to say, it went down quite nicely. On the dinner front, I opted for the chicken and rice dish. Now, in terms of presentation, it was pretty dog's dinner. You can let me know what you think below, but so many other airlines in economy have been doing an awful lot better than this in recent times. In terms of taste, it was actually pretty good, which was a real surprise, I have to say. One area that wasn't a surprise was the dessert. For some reason, it's always an area that British Airways excel. Their current catering provider does really good on this front, and it was a nice way to wrap up what was, overall, a pretty decent meal service. Should say a couple of notes on the dinner service. The choice that night was between a vegetarian pasta or the chicken and rice, so just a couple of choices just there. One downside, it did take them around 2 or so hours to get it all out, which on a late flight was a little bit pedestrian when I think a lot of passengers just wanted to bed down for the evening. Talking of bedding down, it was then time to grab out the pillow, the blanket, which was of decent quality, I have to say, by economy standards, and get some rest. Well, it's an absolutely beautiful start to the morning as we started our descent down into Dubai. I opted not for the breakfast service and instead just a juice to start the day. As you sit back and enjoy one of the prettiest approaches I've ever featured on the channel, it's time for me to share my final thoughts on this flight with British Airways. All in all, a fairly average flight. The crew were very pleasant and food offering, despite appearances, was actually pretty good. On the flip side, it's really sad to see the state they've allowed their A380s to get into, and frankly, their refurb can't come soon enough. I'm pleased to say that they are indeed next in line for the refit, but it's a shame that BA always seems to leave it 1 or 2 years too late. This will be my final major review of the year, so all that's left for me to say is to thank all of you so much for watching my videos throughout the year. I've been so glad to hear from so many of you and glad that they're still useful. There's loads coming up in the new year, including the Club Suites review of British Airways, Japanese Airlines, Philippine Airlines, and so much more. So stay tuned and I'll see you in 2024.